Catherine and Dave are on our side. Besides, they'll be gone soon anyway. My hand froze at those words. Hey, you really gonna do this? Do it? That sounds awful. It's an accident, just an accident. John and his wife, Jane, were so engrossed in their conversation that they didn't even notice I was there. My younger son's wife said to me, "Please call the police immediately, Catherine." I immediately dialed 911. I'm Catherine Johnson. I just turned 71 last month. I've spent 50 years as a homemaker alongside my husband. Thankfully, we've had a joyful journey together. We've been blessed with 2 sons. It might seem ordinary, but I truly consider it a blessing. My husband, Dave, is the 2nd-generation owner of a small wholesale company. He took over the company his father founded 20 years ago. Thanks to some loyal clients, the business has been running smoothly. Now, both our sons work at the company as executive vice presidents. Our eldest, John, graduated from a renowned university here in the US. He's always been top of his class and other moms often praised him. I was always so proud during parent-teacher conferences. Even in college, he worked hard and graduated as the valedictorian. After that, he joined our family business, which at the time was led by my father-in-law. He was always a bit too serious, and never seemed to understand how to approach women, so I was worried about his love life. But then, about 10 years ago, he introduced us to a lovely woman named Jane. From what I gathered, she didn't come from a wealthy family. But she always smiled at me and never forgot my birthday. She'd often bring over some home-cooked meals, saying, "I made too much, Catherine." She came across as kind, thoughtful, and smart. They haven't had children yet, but I adore them both. Our younger son, Robert, is a different story. Robert, unlike John, was never academically inclined. But he was always popular with the ladies. During college, he always had a different girl by his side. He barely graduated, and instead of joining the family business, he worked in a general corporation. That's where he met Sarah. Unlike Jane, Sarah is a bit standoffish and only interacts with us when necessary. She's punctual and would send gifts during Christmas and Thanksgiving and visits during holidays. But there's always been a distance. They chose to live in the next town over, buying an apartment. I never felt the warmth in her tone. After working for about 10 years at the corporation, Robert quit and joined our family business. But he's always been quite carefree, giving Dave and John quite a headache. Still, to me, he's my adorable son. I'm sure both John and Robert will continue to do their best for the company. One day, I was shopping alone. Spring was just around the corner. I was looking for some clothes to wear at the company events. Though they call me a full-time housewife, I'm also a director in name. I rarely go to the office, but occasionally I work from home, prepare gifts for our clients, and socialize with the CEO's wife. That's part of my job. Every year, as part of that job, I attend the new employee orientation. Heading to my favorite store in the mall. That's when I spotted a familiar figure. Jane. It looked like her. But she was walking with a man. John should be at work. Maybe I was mistaken, but I couldn't help but watch them. They entered a luxury brand store. I felt relieved. I must have been wrong. Jane is known to be frugal. I've never seen her with designer items before, and both John and Robert earn as much as any regular employee. Sure, they might splurge on special occasions. While John never says anything, Robert often complains to his boss, saying, "My pay is too low. I can't buy anything. I should have switched jobs." Robert also has kids, so his budget's probably tight. Anyway, it just doesn't make sense for Jane, being a full-time housewife, to visit such an upscale store. I made an unpleasant misunderstanding. I felt silly for my mistake and left. Soon after, it was time for our company's new employee orientation. This year, we welcomed 1 mid-career hire and 3 fresh graduates. Though we're not a large company, we hire about this many employees each year. All of them were from different states this year. I hope they'll stay with us for a long time. The orientation went off without a hitch. But there was an issue afterwards. As I approached the CEO's office, I heard Robert arguing with my husband. "This doesn't make sense. You must have done something." Robert, face red with anger, was confronting my husband. John was trying to calm him down. "What's going on?" I hurriedly asked. "The accounts don't add up," Robert shouted. "The accounts?" I was clueless. I asked her for more details. He explained the discrepancy in detail. "You must have skimmed off the top," my husband shot back. Robert retorted. "Don't be stupid. This is why I can't stand second-generation CEOs. What's that supposed to mean?" The argument between my husband and Robert was heating up. "Enough is enough." At that moment, John's voice rang out. "I'll look into the numbers. Both of you, just stop it. If other employees hear about this, it'll only cause unnecessary anxiety. Don't discuss such matters here." John told them. "You can always rely on the eldest." I was impressed by John's handling of the situation. Both my husband and Robert fell silent. I knew we could count on John. A few days later, John reportedly spoke to my husband. There was nothing suspicious in the ledger, but there was one instance of double payment. I quickly contacted the other party, and they agreed to adjust it for next month's balance. I think that's probably why Robert felt something was off. Thanks to him, we caught the error. Dave was clearly impressed by John's words. The brilliance with which he could discuss such a misunderstanding was noteworthy. He truly was an exceptional son, so much so that sometimes Dave wondered if he really was his own. With the busy rush of April and their earlier disagreement behind them, I was dining out with Dave. It had been a while since we enjoyed a meal together. We decided to splurge a bit and went to the top-rated sushi restaurant in the area that had recently earned a Michelin star. The dazzling dishes were a treat to the eyes. Pretty soon, John and Robert should be thinking about treating their families to places like this, I said, enjoying the meal. Nah, John, sure, but it's too soon for Robert, Dave replied. But Robert did mention that he's struggling with 3 kids and a low salary, didn't he? If he worked as hard as John, I might consider it, Dave said, brushing off my concern with a laugh. Oh, come on, I retorted, slightly annoyed. As the meal progressed, our stomachs became full. We will bring out the dessert shortly, the waiter informed us before retreating. Dave sipped his tea, looking satisfied. Oh, I've got a call. I'll be right back, he said, checking his phone. Hurry back, the dessert will be out soon, I called after him. Alone in the room, I sipped my tea, enjoying the tranquility. However, a familiar voice from the next room interrupted my thoughts. Listen here. It was loud and dominant. At the same time, I felt like I recognized the voice I heard. Calm down. I told you we'd just see how things go for now. The voice that seemed like John's responded. Was that Jane, earlier? Were they here celebrating an anniversary or something? Realizing that my son and his wife were in the adjacent room brought a smile to my face. Once Dave returned, we'd surprise them. They'd never expect to run into us here. As I waited for Dave, the familiar voices of John and Jane continued to reach my ears. What are you waiting for? I never expected Robert to notice. Their conversation was becoming heated. Fortunately, our room is the second to the last. I assume the voices of John and Jane from the very last room should only reach here. It's fine because it's us, but if it were someone else, it would have been bothersome. I thought we'd need to be careful. But soon, being careful would be the least of my concerns. Catherine and Dave are on our side. Besides, they'll be gone soon anyway. At that, my hand froze. Hey, you sure we're gonna do this? Do what? That sounds bad. It's just an accident, okay? The two of them were discussing so intently, they probably had no idea I was here. Or that their voices could be heard in the next room. But first, about the money. You can skim off a bit more, can't ya?
Last time I said it was a double payment and they bought it, but what am I gonna say if Robert gets suspicious again?
I just sat there, stunned, looking up. I didn't want to believe it. John had always been so diligent since he was young. But after hearing their conversation, I turned pale. I was certain. The argument between Robert and my husband after joining the company. It was all because of these two. They had been embezzling company funds. With trembling hands, I called my husband. But either he was on another call or just didn't pick up. Someone I could trust. With that thought, I dialed my phone again. Yes. The person answered the phone right away.
Robert? Where are you now? Please come over immediately.
Robert, my second son. He must have noticed something was off by the tone of my voice. I'll be right there, he said and hung up. In less than 5 minutes, my husband arrived with Robert and his wife, Sarah. It seems they met outside. He probably told her that I had called for him.
What happened? Robert said you called for him.
I silenced my husband by placing my index finger to my lips with a shush. The ice cream dessert that had arrived while my husband was on the phone was now melting. I silently pointed to the room next door. The three exchanged glances. They all sat down quietly, focusing on the voices coming from the neighboring room. While my husband was away, I was alone, eavesdropping on a terrifying conversation next door. Time passed, but the two continued their conversation without stopping. The only time the conversation paused was when the waiter brought in their food. And then it would start again. Hearing about John's betrayal and its contents, I felt like I was going to faint.
Jane?
Sarah whispered. Hearing the voice from next door, my husband, Robert, and Sarah must have figured out who was there.
That's why, daffodils.
You know, if you confuse them with leeks, it can lead to accidents. Jane's voice was audible. The three probably didn't quite grasp the content yet. At the very least, she'll be hospitalized for a while. If we're lucky, there will be a funeral. So, we have to make sure no one finds out about the embezzlement until then. Robert let out a small, puzzled what?
So, maybe we could just wait and see?
John's voice was also heard. This conversation had been going on for a while.
No way! We can't stop the flow of money.
Jane countered John.
If they find out, they won't let me take over the company.
There's no way they'll find out. Or, before they do?
They probably realized that this wasn't just an ordinary conversation. Sarah quickly activated the voice recorder on her smartphone. My husband remained silent, not saying a word. Robert was trembling.
So, daffodils. That explains why you're planted in the garden.
Yes, that's the reason. I've been bringing in dishes, and it seems they love my cooking. Even if it tastes a bit off, they'll just think it's a culinary mistake and eat it, right? I realized the true intentions behind their plans. I wonder what I should make. Scrambled eggs with leeks? They have to eat a lot of it. I wonder how much insurance money they have. Jane's cheerful voice was followed by loud laughter. Knowing my dad, he's got a hefty policy. I'll finally be the CEO. It was worth staying quiet and listening to them all this time. John's smug voice. Robert, consumed by anger, stood up. My husband didn't try to stop him.
No!
The one who stopped him was Sarah.
Why?
I asked Sarah. She seemed indifferent. She hasn't been very close with us, so maybe it felt like it didn't concern her. But Sarah calmly replied.
If we confront them now, it'll play right into their hands. I'm sure both you and your husband would be swayed by John and Jane.
My husband and I remained silent.
So, what are we supposed to do? They're planning to poison my dad and mom.
Robert exclaimed. To which Sarah responded.
It's okay. We have evidence. So please, Call the police right away.
What? I hesitated at her words. Isn't involving the police a bit much?
This is a clear case of embezzlement. And they are planning something dangerous. It's a crime. If we let it continue, both you and your husband might.
But Sarah's words snapped me back to reality. Right, if we keep this up. The thought sent shivers down my spine. I hurriedly called the police. Sarah explained the situation to the restaurant staff and arranged for our meals to be served slower so that the two wouldn't flee. She also apologized for any inconvenience caused. Without her, Robert, in his heated state, would have probably confronted the couple in the next booth, and I, shocked and drained, would have likely forgiven them without doing anything. After a while, the sound of a police siren could be heard. Upon hearing it, Sarah went outside to guide the police. She told the three of us to wait inside as we probably wouldn't remain calm. We heard voices of Sarah and the police officers. Then, they opened the door to the neighboring room.
What's going on?
Jane's voice rang out.
Sarah?
It seemed the couple finally noticed her. John, Jane, I've heard your side of the story. I called the police because I thought it was necessary. Let's discuss this at the station to avoid causing more trouble here, said Sarah in her calm and composed voice, which never sounded more reassuring.
What are you talking about? We were just having a regular conversation. Just imagine what my in-laws would say if they knew about this.
They probably thought Sarah acted on her own. They mentioned us in their complaints, loudly objecting.
Just because Robert isn't becoming the CEO, you called the cops to frame John? Don't lash out on us, Jane shouted.
Hearing this from next door, my husband stood up.
Dad.
Robert turned to look at him. The argument in the neighboring room continued. For now, let's move, suggested Sarah. Following her, an officer asked, would you mind coming with us voluntarily?
I don't want to. I haven't done anything wrong,
Jane exclaimed.
Exactly. No need to go,
John added.
Oh really? I thought you had some excuse. Anyway, we're going to the police station now to file a complaint. Shall we go?
Sarah said that. She must have called out to the police. Both of them don't seem to be feeling remorseful. We had to get up and go to the police station ourselves. I stumbled a bit. Robert was there to support me.
Mom, you okay?
Yes. Robert had been quite a handful in the past, but he's grown so dependable now. We left the room. In the hallway, there were Sarah talking to a police officer, presumably heading towards the next room. I wonder if John and Jane were further down.
Mom, are you there?
Hearing our voices, John shouted. He must have finally realized we were there. His voice sounded quite frantic.
If you want to make excuses, I'd suggest you come with us. Next time, the police will be coming with an arrest warrant to pick both of you up.
Sarah, as always, said this calmly. Both of them seemed to rise at her words. In all the shock, I had completely forgotten, but Sarah had taken care of the check for us. And so, John and Jane were taken to the police station in a patrol car. We followed them in our own car. Upon reaching the police station, John and Jane, who had arrived before us, were seemingly pleading with the police, saying things like it's a misunderstanding, and my sister-in-law is mistaken. We could hear them even from outside the room. Another officer led us to a different room. There, I recounted everything I had heard earlier. About the embezzlement of company money. And about preparing to poison us with daffodils. I started crying as I spoke. The officer was very considerate towards me. My husband held me by the shoulders.
For the company losses, we'll need you to gather more information by tomorrow and then submit a detailed complaint about the embezzlement and the total damage.
Dave responded to the officer's words.
More than that, I can't forgive them for trying to harm my husband's parents.
Sarah said that very bluntly. I was touched by how much she cared and stood up for us. The officer mentioned that. Since they hadn't actually acted on their plans, they couldn't arrest them for attempted murder. However, after listening to the conversation Sarah had recorded, it seems they can arrest them for a preparatory offense. They had actually prepared the daffodils as poison and had been serving us food until now to lower our guard. The pictures I had taken of Jane's dishes would also serve as evidence. I hadn't taken them with that intention, but it's funny how things turn out to be useful when you least expect it. Listening to the officer and hearing Sarah's voice, my initial sadness turned to anger. We need them to be arrested and to reflect on their actions. But more than that, the feeling of betrayal from the son I had raised and his wife I had loved deeply grew stronger. I wish they would see hell. The fact that I thought this scared me. Perhaps thinking this way makes me a bad parent. But maybe it's natural for a parent to feel this way. Robert and Sarah decided it was best we didn't meet John and Jane. My husband was furious and probably didn't want to see them, and they felt I might end up forgiving them if I saw them. That might not be the case. I'm pretty mad too. But it's also true that I might forgive them if they apologized. We left everything to Robert and Sarah and went home. It seems our grandchildren were with Sarah's mother who had come over to play, so there was nothing to worry about. They told us to rest and not worry about anything. That comforted me a lot. The next day, we got a call from the police. It seems John and Jane didn't admit to anything. But Robert managed to find out about the embezzlement and the amount within a day. Believe it or not, since their first year of marriage for about 10 years. They had been embezzling money, sometimes a few $100s each month, and sometimes larger amounts. In total, they had taken nearly $200,000. Hearing this, I felt like I was in total darkness. To think I had been deceived for so long. Sarah, who came over to console me, took care of the household chores and contacted the police on my behalf. It seems the kids are still being looked after by Sarah's mom. I feel terrible for causing them such trouble. Dave consulted with the police and filed a complaint. With this, both of them, especially John, are going to be arrested. I felt relieved, yet also full of regret. It's hard to describe, but thanks to Sarah, I managed to keep my sanity. In addition to that, both were arrested on other charges. The planted daffodils and Sarah's recorder served as undeniable evidence. Those two, acting like they didn't know anything. They didn't seem to show any remorse. The embezzlement was a criminal case, and Dave sued both John and Jane. The embezzled money seemed to have been spent by Jane on her male entertainer. Did John know about it? If he did, he's a complete fool. At the trial, the entertainer was called as a witness. Sure, her husband was set to be the next CEO, but I had no clue that money was stolen. I had no feelings for her beyond that of a client. She was just a high-paying customer. Hearing the entertainer's words, Jane lost her cool.
But you said you wanted to marry me. I supported your business.
Jane shouted.
What the hell are you talking about?
John shouted back. Come on, you've got to know that's just a sales pitch. It's absurd, said the entertainer, dismissing Jane. Serves her right. I couldn't help but almost laugh. From this, it seems John probably didn't know. Apparently, the money was sent to John's not-so-wealthy parents. What a fool, caught by such a silly woman. In the end, both were found guilty. As for Jane, she even got rejected by her beloved entertainer in front of everyone. After the trial, both Sarah and Dave were laughing out loud. Truly, what goes around comes around. I remember seeing Jane at a luxury store before. The man next to her must have been that entertainer. I wish I'd realized then, but well, all's well that ends well. The two were also indicted on other charges. With all the evidence stacked against them, their excuses didn't hold up. Of course, they were found guilty. While they were granted probation for these charges, they received actual prison sentences for the embezzlement. John cried and apologized to me. But I had no intention of forgiving him. He was fired from the company. All insurances and such were changed to have Dave as the beneficiary. My husband made it clear that he's making Dave his successor. John, now jobless, divorced Jane in prison. It's good that he's free from such a woman. I don't want anything to do with John anymore, but blood ties can't be severed. The police said family should support him to prevent reoffending, but John's an adult and that woman's out of the picture. I'm sure he can manage on his own without relying on elderly parents. Trust doesn't come back easily. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust John again in my lifetime. Afterwards, Robert took over my husband's job as his successor. I really owe Sarah a lot. If not for her, this matter might not have been resolved. To show my gratitude, I visited Sarah's home.
Granny!
My grandchildren ran to me with joy. Sarah said, "Sorry for the mess," and led me to the living room. It had been a while since I visited their house. But it looked tidy, hardly a mess. I was delighted to see a photo of my 3 grandkids, myself, and my husband displayed. "Sarah, I can't thank you enough." I expressed my gratitude.
"Oh, I've just done what's expected of me, really."
Sarah always said this in her usual calm manner.
"You know, I used to be uncomfortable around you, Sarah. You never really tried to get close to us, did you?"
"That's why," I murmured softly.
"I knew you felt that way. But that's okay,"
Sarah responded.
"I truly care about the both of you. Sometimes, when personal emotions get involved, they might cause discomfort. That's why I believe it's important to maintain a certain distance. It's all for valuing the two of you."
Her words deeply resonated with me. Jane always tried to butter me up, and I was foolish enough to dote on her. But I was truly foolish not to notice Sarah's sincere feelings towards us.
"Granny, look! A gift!"
My youngest grandchild, Anne, exclaimed and handed me a folded paper.
"I made it with Mommy before you came. I told her I wanted to make you a present and she helped me."
The small origami wasn't perfect, with some edges misaligned. But I cherished that simple piece of art dearly. "Oh, and thank you. Granny is really happy. I'll treasure it." My words seemed to delight Anne. I'm glad Robert married Sarah. With her around, I know Robert and my grandchild are in good hands. "Sarah, thank you so much. Let's keep supporting each other, okay?" My grandchild, looking puzzled at my words, smiled with a twinkle in her eyes, seemingly influenced by my joy. "Stay away because my wife dislikes it. She's nice to you, Mom, while you're here, but she's in a bad mood once you leave. She gets tired every time you visit because she feels she has to be on her best behavior. Read the room." My son, Ken, has become distant after remarrying. Initially, I liked his new wife, Lisa, and my step-granddaughter, Anna, but soon I started to distrust them. If it was just me they were harsh with, I probably wouldn't have done anything. But then there's my treasure, my granddaughter, Ivy. What I saw that day was Ivy, alone and crying in the dimly lit garden.
"What's wrong? Where's your mom?"
"They're having a birthday party for my sister, just the family." Ivy then tearfully told me something shocking. "Dad's there too." Hearing this, I immediately told Ivy.
"We're gonna move out, just the two of us."
I believe everyone has their non-negotiables. For me, it's Ivy. My name is Michelle. I'm a housewife who just turned 60. Though I've lost my husband, I now enjoy a free-spirited life with my toy poodle, Moko. Working part-time is also something I cherish. I have 2 sons. My eldest, Yosef, has a family far away, so I can't visit often. But now that we can communicate via smartphones, I think it's a wonderful era. Ken lives nearby. After his divorce a few years ago, Ken and Ivy moved in with me, into the house where I lived alone and where my sons grew up. It was probably comforting for him. Eventually, Ken found happiness again and remarried last year. Lisa, his new wife, is bright and charming. She's friendly towards me, and so far, I have a good impression of her. Lisa is also divorced and brought her daughter, Anna, who is about Ivy's age.
I trusted my son's choice and blessed them both. As they remarried, I let them live in the house I had lived in for free, and moved to a rental myself. It was hard to leave the neighbors I got along with, but I wanted them to have a fresh start without struggles. Now, I live in a quite old and small rented house. The landlord is an old acquaintance, so I got a very good deal on the rent. Though it's small, having a garden where I can grow tomatoes is fun. The few years before Ken remarried were lively with the three of us living together. Now, thinking they're newlyweds, even if it's a second marriage, I try not to intrude too much. There are times when I feel a bit lonely, but spending quiet time with Moko is also nice. During the summer break, I was excited to cook a feast. Ivy was supposed to come over for a sleepover. I figured Ken would bring Ivy over. Even if they didn't eat with me, I baked cookies to give them as gifts. Eventually, the doorbell rang, and expecting my granddaughter, I was happy to open the door. There was Ivy, alone. I instinctively looked around for Ken, but no one was there. Seeing my surprised face, Ivy told me, "Dad's busy. It's just me." Ivy had taken the bus. I invited her in, puzzled. For some reason, Ivy was wearing her school's gym clothes. At 13, I wondered if she wouldn't prefer to dress more fashionably.
Are you wearing your gym clothes because you had school today? It's your holiday, isn't it?
I couldn't help but bombard her with questions. Then, Ivy answered with a slightly gloomy face.
It's summer break, no activities.
I became even more curious as to why she was wearing her school's gym clothes, especially since I could see stains on the cuffs and hem in the bright light inside. It didn't seem like she washed it. Becoming more curious, I asked again why she was dressed like that. Ivy mentioned something concerning.
Lisa said to wear the jersey because laundry is tough. I'm trying not to get it dirty, though.
It was clear who would say such a thing. Lisa, who married Ken, was in charge of the washing machine at their house. Could it be that Ivy, being the daughter of Ken's previous wife, has become unwelcome? I asked Ivy many questions, concerned, but she didn't want to talk further. Perhaps Lisa says the same to her own daughter, Anna, and that's just how she is. I was upset, but making a fuss could only worsen things. So, I swallowed my dissatisfaction for the time being. But at least, I wanted her to look happier while she was at my house. Since Ivy was staying for a few days, I immediately took her out to buy some cute clothes. When it was time for her to go back, I sent her home in those clothes. Lisa, who greeted us, kept saying cute and thanked me repeatedly. Just seeing her like that, you wouldn't think she's the same person who insisted on the jersey. Maybe I was overthinking Lisa's treatment of Ivy. Still worried, I casually asked Ken, but he just brushed it off. Our home is happy, Mom. You're worrying too much. Was it all just needless worry? However, later on, I spotted Anna, my step-granddaughter, while out shopping. To my surprise, she was wearing the clothes I bought for Ivy, hanging out with some friends. When I called out to her, Anna responded coldly. I'm just wearing them because Ivy gave them to me. So what? It felt odd, considering she's all smiles and calls me grandma at home. Unable to shake this uneasy feeling, I called Ken to ask what was going on. That's just something between sisters. I don't know anything about it. Just let them be. The response was dismissive. Feeling uneasy, I couldn't settle down. I wanted to see things for myself. But when I said I wanted to visit, Ken told me this, effectively barring me from visiting. Stay away because my wife dislikes it. She's nice to you, Mom, while you're here, but she's in a bad mood once you leave. She gets tired every time you visit because she feels she has to be on her best behavior. Read the room. I was shocked by my son's change. I thought he wasn't like this, but I understand that relationships with daughters-in-law can be complicated.
Then at least let the grandkids come over to Grandma's house sometimes,
I said reluctantly. Ken responded with a scoff. Grandkids? Your only grandchild is Ivy. Irritated by his tone, I ended the call quickly. At that moment,
I had no idea this distrust would grow and eventually burst. When it rains, it pours. Around that time, my mother passed away. She had been in a facility, but until she became unwell, she lived alone in our large family home. My mother wasn't sociable and particularly disliked having people over. Partly because of that, after getting married, I rarely visited my childhood home, opting instead to meet in town for meals with my family. Being an only child, I inherited the house. When I entered my childhood home for the first time in a while, it had been completely remodeled. The bathroom and kitchen were shining. Maybe she had it renovated, knowing her time was near. The property value in the area has skyrocketed. With the renovations, the value must have increased even more. Realizing the estate's worth, I nearly collapsed. Turns out, I had inherited a mansion worth $2 million. Unexpectedly, I was faced with inheritance taxes. I have some savings, but this was a shock. Reluctantly, I asked my sons for a bit of financial help. Yosef was quite worried and readily offered his support. Thankfully, Yosef's family also showed concern as if it were their own matter. But Ken, my younger son, was cold even when I visited to ask for help.
I'm strapped for cash too, Mom. If it's too much, just sell the house. I've considered that, but it seems like it won't sell quickly.
Throughout the conversation, Ken kept glancing behind me. I was sitting on the sofa at Ken's house, with the kitchen right behind me. I realized that Ken was probably looking at Lisa's face for reactions. Though it's understandable since Lisa is new to the family, it still made me sigh.
We have kids, and it costs money. I'm sorry, but we really can't afford it. Maybe you should consider taking out a loan?
Finally, Lisa herself began to offer solutions. I just sat there in silence. With my savings and the help from Yosef, I was almost covered. I had hoped for just a little more help, but it seems it was a wasted effort. Suddenly, I noticed Ivy and Anna looking worried from the entrance of the living room. I saw that Ivy was wearing socks with holes in them. Considering the Jersey incident before, it dawned on me that maybe Ken and his family were struggling with money.
It's really tight for you, isn't it?
I sighed even deeper. Swallowing my pride, I reached out to Yosef again. He agreed to provide additional support as if it was the most natural thing to do. With this and my mother's inheritance combined, it seemed like I could manage. I breathed a sigh of relief. This ordeal taught me how troublesome inheritance can be. From talking to acquaintances, I learned it's especially difficult when there are siblings involved. Having two sons myself, this wasn't someone else's problem. It made me think about getting my own affairs in order sooner rather than later. It was after consulting at a legal advice session by a lawyer. It was about dinner time, and I was thinking of making something simple for tonight's meal as I parked my car in front of the house. That's when I saw something that made me do a double take. There was Ivy, sitting in a dark corner of the garden, hugging her knees and crying. I rushed out of the car and ran to Ivy.
What's wrong? Where's your mom?
It wasn't strange for Ivy to come here by herself since she had done it before. But sitting here alone, without any notice, was definitely odd. Ivy sniffled and finally muttered,
"They're having a birthday party for my sister, just the family."
I was chilled to the bone. Could Lisa and Anna have kicked Ivy out of the house? Shaking with anger, I pressed for more information.
And your dad?
I wanted to know if Ken was aware of this. Hoping that as her biological parent, he would stand up for Ivy. But Ivy's answer was the worst possible.
Dad's having the party with them. They said I'm not part of the family.
It felt like a blow to the head. Trying to steady my shaking head, I attempted to make sense of the situation. My son Ken, who used to be so endearing, seemed like a completely different person now. I remembered the clothes I bought for Ivy, which Anna ended up wearing. Perhaps they were taken from Ivy without her consent. And Ken and Lisa were okay with that? Something inside me snapped.
We're gonna move out, just the two of us.
I told Ivy, trying to contain the rage boiling inside me. I urged the bewildered Ivy inside the house. Immediately, I started looking for a moving company. Being old-fashioned, Ivy helped by using the internet. It seemed we could get help right away since we didn't have much to move. I had been undecided about what to do with my inherited parents' house, whether to live there or sell it. It was too big for just me, and I was content with renting. But if my beloved granddaughter was with me, that changed everything.
If Ivy's okay with it, let's live together in the house I got from your great-grandma.
When I suggested it, Ivy looked up and blinked in surprise.
Really? I don't have to stay at my dad's?
Her uncertain voice broke my heart. I regretted not realizing what she was going through sooner. I was worried about Ivy having to change schools because of the different school district, but she seemed actually relieved.
I'm connected with my close friends on social media, and we can meet up, so it's fine. I've always disliked that Anna was at the same school anyway,
she said, finally showing me a smile. I truly care about Ivy. When Ken remarried, I blessed their union because he said he would love both daughters without discrimination. Feeling betrayed now is something I find hard to accept. As I was fuming, Ivy gently touched my arm.
Grandma, it's okay. It's my fault for not fitting in with the new family.
Even after going through such ordeals, Ivy is still blaming herself. Moved by her kindness, my anger at those who treated this sweet child so poorly flared up again. After arranging with the moving company, I called Ken. But it went straight to voicemail. With no choice, I left a message saying Ivy was staying with me. The next day, Ivy and I headed to our new home. Despite my worries, there was still no word from Ken. When I called again upon arriving at our new place, Ken answered with a sleepy voice. It was his day off, and he seemed to have just woken up. As soon as I mentioned Ivy, Ken sounded annoyed.
Ivy is probably out at a friend's house or something.
He hadn't listened to my voicemail. Taken aback yet managing my anger, I continued the conversation.
Oh, I heard it was Anna's birthday party yesterday?
Ken's voice suddenly pitched up in response.
What? Who told you that? Oh, well, yeah, we had a party, so what?
I could hear rustling on the other end and a woman's voice, likely Lisa or Anna, in the background. As I waited silently, Lisa's voice came through.
Hello, long time no talk. Did you remember Anna's birthday?
We should have invited you.
It would have been nice to celebrate with the whole family.
Her usually sweet tone was irritating now. And the obvious insincerity was unbearable.
Ivy was in my backyard. So, Ivy is not part of the family, huh? What do you mean?
Lisa sounded flustered as I spoke in a low voice. The call switched back to Ken, hello? As if he was consulting with Lisa on what to say. But I didn't wait.
I left a message on the voicemail, but you never checked. When I got back yesterday, Ivy was crying in my yard. She said she was told she's not part of the family and was kicked out. And you were having Anna's birthday party.
Ken stumbled over his words, trying to come up with an excuse. Muffled, they debated, damn, she went to her grandma's. Told her to go to a friend's. Frustrated with Ken's attempts to deceive, I clenched my teeth. I was beyond just scolding, I was determined to take serious action.
That's the situation, so Ivy is with me now. You seem to think she's not part of the family, so if you want, I'll take her in for good.
Wait, that's a lie.
She left on her own.
Ken tried to blame Ivy, infuriatingly. But I had evidence. Hoping Lisa could hear, I made sure to raise my voice even louder.
I know it's not a lie, I even asked the neighbors. It seems to happen quite often.
Ken and his family lived in the house I had for years. And I was close with the neighbors. Especially with a couple across the street of my age, with whom I still kept in touch. It turns out this wasn't the first time Ivy was left out. Sometimes, when she was locked out till late, the kind couple noticed and took her in. After hearing this from Ivy, I confirmed the facts with a call. The neighbors thought I knew and apologized for the late report. Ivy had told them not to worry me.
I never thought you and Lisa would do such things. I'm utterly disappointed. Especially you, being her biological father. It seems my parenting was a complete failure.
Ken went silent, probably realizing excuses were futile, yet not offering an apology. Disgusted, I concluded the call.
Let's reconsider our relationship moving forward. Ivy is my precious, only granddaughter.
And Ken was no longer my precious son, but someone I couldn't forgive. I also started to reconsider my estate plans. Naturally, I wanted to reduce what I'd leave for Ken and Lisa to the bare minimum. To be honest, I don't want to give them a single penny. I've consulted with a lawyer and decided to divide everything that can be divided between Yosef and Ivy. For what is absolutely necessary for my life, I will make sure to leave a will.
This way, even if something happens to me, there's nothing left to give. Everything has been passed on.
I told Yosef and Ivy this, and I felt a sense of relief. Yosef even offered to come from abroad, but I assured him it was okay. We agreed to meet up once things settle down here. I also made him promise not to help his brother under any circumstances. Over a video call, Yosef nodded strongly, agreeing. Yosef and his family were quite angry after hearing about what Ken did, so I felt reassured leaving things in their hands. About a month later, I received a call from Ken on my cell phone. I wasn't sure if I should be annoyed by his timing or angry for his lack of contact until now.
Why aren't you at home?
When I called back, he immediately started complaining without even saying hello. Despite my irritation, I decided to deal with him properly. We've moved.
Ivy's transfer to a new school is already settled. I saw on Anna's social media that her parents were happy about Ivy leaving, so what do you want now?
I had asked Ivy and looked at Anna's social media account myself. There, it was happily written, "Loser left, major win." Granny's taking her in. Mom and stepdad are thrilled. I was burning with anger again. Unforgivable. Absolutely not. Whatever.
I called about that old house, you know, your mother's old place. Obviously, you're gonna get rid of it, right? I know someone who'll buy the old stuff. Might make a bit of money before you tear it down, let them have at it.
That old house must be this house where Ivy and I are living now. It's well built, though certainly old. Ken probably only remembers its appearance from before it was renovated when he was a child. And the exterior was dirty. He has no idea the house was remodeled by my grandmother into a comfortable living space. And that he would receive nothing from my inheritance.
Sorry, but that house has been sorted out long ago. There's absolutely nothing left to dispose of.
When I told him this, Ken muttered complaints and hung up, disappointed. I was deeply disappointed he didn't even ask where we had moved to until the end. It seems he truly has no desire to see Ivy or me. The love for his own daughter seems to have completely vanished. There's no hesitation now. It's sad to think about the days I raised him, but any affection I had for Ken is gone. After everything was settled, I decided to visit Ken's house. This time, I made a proper appointment. Lisa, as always, was sweet-voiced and welcoming. Leaving Ivy at home, I headed to Ken's house. The house filled with memories of my husband and sons when they were young had completely changed for me. Considering how Ivy was treated there, it's no longer just a place of nostalgia. Lisa, surprised to see me, opened the door. "Who is this?" Her smile vanished in an instant. And she looked suspiciously at the person beside me. I had brought a man with me as a companion, introducing him only as someone who offered advice as we entered the house. "Grandma, welcome." "Hey, do I get something today?" I was dismayed by the immediate request for money. Having always given gifts to Anna and Ivy during my visits, Anna was expecting it this time as well. When I said not today, Anna's face soured.
"I came today just to talk with your dad and mom about something important." "Ken, Lisa, could we have a moment, please?" I took out some documents and asked Ken and Lisa to sit and listen. Knowing there was no allowance, Anna retreated to her room in a huff. The four of us, Ken, Lisa, my companion, and I, sat around the table.
I placed my bag on the table, turning to face Ken and Lisa. The first thing I brought up was about the real estate appraisal. It was time to reveal that what Ken called a shack was actually a mansion worth $2 million.
I took over my family home, right? I had it appraised. Turns out, the land value in that area has skyrocketed. It's a spacious house because it's old, right? And since my mother had it completely remodeled, it's worth about $2 million.
The moment they heard $2 million, Ken and Lisa's eyes lit up. They leaned in with faces full of joy. And Ken was the first to speak.
That's incredible. When are you selling it?
It seemed he assumed I'd convert the house into cash. He probably thought they would get a significant share. But that wasn't going to happen.
I'm not selling it. I'm living there.
Then Lisa leaned in, probably imagining a very luxurious house upon hearing it was worth $2 million.
How enviable! A $2 million mansion. We'd love to live with you. We'll even take care of you in your old age.
Lisa's once endearing smile now seemed creepy, knowing what she had been thinking behind it. Of course, my answer was no.
I'm not considering living together. And I'm fine without your care.
Lisa kept pushing, but I firmly said no. Impatient with my refusal to live together, Ken spoke up again.
Come on, we're family. Living together would be beneficial for you, right? Oh, right, you're living with Ivy now. Then, as her parents, we should be together too.
Thinking about it, what a convenient man my son was. Using the word family as if he had forgotten how they treated Ivy, his own blood. Bringing up Ivy's name now, as an afterthought, was truly infuriating. I decided it was time to knock Ken and Lisa down a peg. I signaled the man who came with me, then announced to Ken and Lisa.
That house will never be yours. Because it's already in your brother's name. Even in the event of an unforeseen accident, you can't inherit even the compulsory portion. Meaning, Ken and Lisa, you won't get a single penny.
Their faces at that moment were priceless. Shocked and probably outraged, they trembled before me as I spread out the documents. It explained that all the property had already been given away as living gifts. My assets were now just a modest part-time salary, which would quickly disappear into living expenses. I had done everything possible not to give Ken anything. The house was now in the name of my eldest son, Yosef. The condition for taking over was that he would take care of Ivy if anything happened to me. I sold the car for cash and put the small remaining savings all in Ivy's name. Even my jewelry and bags, anything of value, was all Ivy's now. This was the least I could do to show my love.
Damn it! It's outrageous not to give me my share. Don't you care about your own son?
Ken and Lisa screamed almost in unison. They had coldly refused to help when I struggled with inheritance taxes, yet now they expected so much. To their complaints of why and how could you, I presented documents summarizing what I had heard from Ivy and the neighbors.
Ken, didn't you care about your own daughter? I came here today to sever ties. I can't associate with someone who would do such things to my precious granddaughter. My family is Ivy alone. You are now strangers to me.
As Ken and Lisa began to loudly protest, I prepared for the final blow.
Because of this incident, I'm consulting with a lawyer to rewrite my will. Expect the bare minimum, if anything at all.
Ken, red-faced and furious, banged on the table. The noise was enough for Anna, who had retreated to her room, to sneak a peek.
If you do that, I won't let it go. Even if you're my mother, be prepared for what comes next.
Threatening me, his own mother, Ken, along with Anna and Lisa, cursed foully. Calling me stingy, cowardly, and even wishing Ivy and I would disappear before the will could be finalized. Ken even flashed his fists, hinting at harm to Ivy and me. I was furious. Now was the time for the knockout punch.
What do you think of this testimony?
The voice recorder hidden in my bag had been running all along, capturing their loud threats perfectly.
Yes, it could serve as evidence of trying to interfere with the creation of a will through intimidation.
The man accompanying me, who who was actually a lawyer I consulted for the living will, responded. Ignoring my son's family, who were taken aback at the mention of a lawyer, I quickly headed for the door. On my way out, I turned back and mentioned as if remembering. "Oh right, the ownership of this house has changed. It used to be my property, but now it's entirely owned by someone else. They mentioned you'd have to decide whether to pay rent or move out, so you might want to discuss that among yourselves."
What? If we lose the house, what are we supposed to do?
Lisa shrieked. Ken, as if jolted, stood up and reached out to me, pleading.
We can't afford that, Mom, please help us. I'll apologize for everything about Ivy.
I brushed off Ken's hand trying to grasp me. He collapsed on the spot, even resorting to kneeling, but I ignored him and left the house. He should get a taste of what Ivy felt, unable to stay in what should have been the safest place for her. Eventually, Ivy and I welcomed a peaceful life. She made new friends at her new school and went there happily. I was worried about her introverted nature, but luckily she found friends with similar interests, often drawing together.
We're going to see the movie version next time. It's really cool, wanna come, Grandma?
Seeing Ivy talk so lively, as if she was a different person, was incredibly endearing. Gone were the days she looked downtrodden, now she was chatty and even enjoyed dressing up. Every day was a joy, seeing my granddaughter thriving.
I'm fine, you go enjoy it with your friends.
I cheerfully replied, petting Moko. Moko adores Ivy too, always cuddling up to her. Living these days filled with energy from my granddaughter and dog is truly delightful. Additionally, I was overjoyed to learn that legal measures allowed us to disinherit Ken. It was a rare outcome, I was told, which made me feel even better. The main reasons were the long-term mistreatment of Ivy and the threats made against me. The foolish couple, Ken and Lisa, kept calling afterward, threatening, "Don't write a will," or "If you've already written it, rewrite it now, or we'll make a scene." Thanks to them, I had plenty of evidence to consult the police. Although it didn't escalate to a criminal case, the police did issue them a warning, which was also used as evidence to ensure they wouldn't inherit anything, not even the compulsory portion. Ken, always a braggart, turned out to be a coward at heart. The involvement of the police made him lose his bluster, and he no longer dared to contact me. Moreover, he was blamed by Lisa for their situation, leading to a very tense atmosphere and eventually, their divorce. This was relayed to me by the neighbors across from Ken's house. Their marital disputes were notorious in the neighborhood. Embarrassing, but since I've cut ties with them, I can only shake my head in disbelief. I heard from Ivy's friends that Anna stopped going to school. Troubled by her parents' intense conflicts and repeated runaway attempts before their divorce. What becomes of Anna? Raised and spoiled by Lisa and Ken, is hard to imagine. Now, with no contact from them and their departure from the house, I have no desire to track their whereabouts. My priority is Ivy, here with me. Along with the memories of my late mother in this house and Moko, our toy poodle. These treasures are all I need. Wishing for Ivy's continued growth and happiness, I keep busy with part-time work and household chores. Hoping for endless happy days, I want to stay a lively grandmother forever.